Hi guys, this is Dr. Sadasivam once again with you. We had in the last video talked about 5 important building blocks for emotional intelligence, starting with self-awareness, managing emotions, motivating oneself, recognizing emotions in others, and handling relationships. And in the last video, we had also committed to you that we will be coming up with separate videos on each of those 5 topics. And today we are going to look at the first topic, which is self-awareness. Before we dive into this subject, I would like to talk about a small story of a Zen master and a samurai. In this particular story, what happens is I'm narrating this story because this was the same story narrated by our Daniel Goleman, the author of Emotional Intelligence, to emphasize the importance of self-awareness. The story goes on like this. Belligerent samurai once went to a Japanese Zen master. He requested him to explain the concept of heaven and hell. But the Zen monk replied with anger, "You're nothing. I can't, waste my time with people like you." And he cursed him. When the honor was attacked, the samurai, they're very strong people, fighters, he flew into a rage. He pulled out his sword from his gabard and said, "I can kill you right now if I want," he told the Zen master. Then the monk politely tells the samurai, "This is hell." But then samurais are mentally highly capable people, because the whole game, the samurai game, it needs mental, physical fitness. Everything is important. So the samurai quickly came back to his senses, and he started seeing the truth in what the Zen master was pointing out, and he calmed down. He kept his sword back inside and thanked the monk for providing the insight to him. And the monk said, "This is heaven." This is the story, guys. Now we are talking about a very, very important aspect of self-awareness, and we will build on from this. There is a crucial difference between caught in a feeling and then being swept by it. This is one extremely important injection by Socrates, a Greek philosopher. He says that the first step towards the emotional stability is know thyself. Many psychologists use these terms, metacognition, etc. What is metacognition? Metacognition is aware of one's thoughts and meta moods. What is metamood? Metamood is awareness of one's emotions. Metacognition is awareness of one's thoughts. That is an ongoing, a continuous attention to one's own states. Is the first step towards self-awareness. That's what we are talking about. This has been researched thoroughly by Sigmund Freud. He calls it as evenly hovering attention. Sigmund Freud calls it. So what actually happens is there is an activated neocortex. Remember, we talked a lot about neocortex, which is part of our thinking brain. Let's not give too much importance to these specific words, but just try to understand the spirit of what I'm saying. Even if you forget words like amygdala, neocortex, that's not a big issue. The words are not important. But we need to understand the larger meaning, which I would like to communicate to all of you. Sigmund Freud, when he talks about the activated neocortex, we already learned in the earlier video that it's the thinking brain. He calls that it is a neural, mode of self reflection even during turbulent moods. For example, even if we are in a state of anger, controlling anger is the second point, second step. The first is a self-reflection that we are angry in the first place. So the first step is to step back from the emotions. Listen to it very carefully. The first step to control anger is to step back from the emotions. And that is when a parallel stream of awareness, when we talk about it at a meta level, right, which hovers above or besides the main flow of anger, I'm saying. Putting it in short, it is an awareness of what is happening rather than getting immersed into those feelings and emotions and being swept by it. For example, if there is a flood of water coming with great force, it sweeps off everything that comes in its way, even cycles, trees. Much in the same manner, this parallel stream of awareness, we need to be aware of what is happening rather than getting immersed and being carried away by it. So when we talk about self-awareness, it is the awareness of both our moods and the thoughts about that mood. Mood is a state of mind, right? So which means it is an awareness of both our moods and thoughts about that mood. Now we will talk about John Mayer, Dr. John Mayer, who was a professor at New Hampshire University. He's done lots and lots of researches. In fact, he says that it is a non-reactive, non-judgmental attention to our inner state. We are aware of our inner state. So it is a non-reactive. We don't have to react. And it should be non-judgment also, judgmental also, good, bad, etc. Non-judgmental. Therefore, being aware and acting to change our behavior, they both go hand in hand. For a small example, when you see a small boy hitting another boy, you may shout at him, "Stop hitting that boy." The boy may stop hitting him. You may stop the hitting, but that anger persists for whatever reason in that boy that made him beat in the first place. He may stop hitting, but the anger is simmering inside. So recognition is the first step towards regulation. We are talking about recognition of anger within ourselves is the first step towards regulation of anger. So generally in this context, people fall into three states. One is self-awareness, second is engulf, third is acceptance. Self-aware are those people who are aware of their moods. They know their boundaries. They always have a positive outlook. Even if they are in a bad mood, they tend to get off their bad moods very quickly. The second category of people, they are engulfed people. They always are swept by their emotions. They're fully overwhelmed. Most of the time, they are out of control. They lose control on words. If they are angry, they will say anything. Later, they will feel sorry for it. Engulfed people. Third, accepting. This is slightly, confusing. They may have good clarity, but they are susceptible to bad moods. You will never be able to judge them. What is their mental state at one point of time? In life, I think each one of us might have gone through all these three classes of people. People who are self-aware, people who are engulfed, and people who are accepting. Now, once again, let's little bit deep dive into this concept. We will talk about the turbulence that happens in an aeroplane. This is another example that Daniel Goleman had given in his book on emotional intelligence. So I would like to repeat that story. There is an announcement in the aeroplane by the pilot that the flight is going through big turbulence, and it is actually going through turbulence. The plane is tossed here and there. There are three kinds of people. First kind of people, they are not giving much thought to it. They are watching a movie, they are reading a book. They want to tune out of that particular situation because in their opinion, they know that the pilot knows his job and he leaves his complete burden on him and he is remaining cool. He knows that the flight is at 40,000 feet above the sea level and as a passenger, he can't do anything. So he completely puts his burden on the pilot, but he tunes out of the situation, watching a movie or, reading a book. This is not a normal turbulence. This is a turbulence that has tossed people here and there. It happens at times, guys. The second is People who will start take the emergency manual and they will start reviewing the procedures. Where will the oxygen mask come from? Where will those life vests, those procedures? They are the second kind of people. The third kind of people are the ones who will watch the flight attendants. They would like to see their reactions. Flight attendants, air hostess, and then assess how risky it is. They will keenly watch their reactions. Air hostesses and other attendants, just to check if those guys are showing any sign of panics. And there are a fourth category of people who will give attention to the sound of the engine in the aircraft. If there is anything worrisome, if there is some smell coming up, sometimes smell comes in the aircraft also. At this juncture, we would like to take some of the researches of Dr. Miller. He's a professor in Temple University and he has conducted enormous researches on this. What he says is, during times of such distresses, there are certain attentional stances shown by each of these passengers. These attentional stances have different consequence for how people experience their own emotional reactions. That is Miller, right? Dr. Miller we are talking about. That is also part of self-awareness, because a lot of studies have been conducted on that. People who are self-aware, what they do. So there is another professor by name Dr. Peter Stefanos. He was a professor in Harvard University, and in 1972 he came up with another path-breaking, because I'm putting all these instances so that we will be able to connect these dots and evolve a big picture about what self-awareness is and why is that important in our journey towards complete emotional stability. Now, Dr. Peter Shinoff of Harvard University has come out with a term called as Alexithymia. Alexithymia is a Greek word. Let me dissect that word for you for easy understanding. A means lack of, lexi is a word we all know, lexicon, and thymos means emotions. Alexithymia, which means lack of words to express emotions. That's what he says. Now, to explain alexithymia, let me tell you a very small stories. I'll be telling you lots and lots of small stories, because stories will make our understanding a lot more clearer, because it's not the words we will focus on. For example, alexithymia, it's not necessary you should remember this word. That's not what we want. We are not sitting here to write an MBA exam. This is a video where we would like to look at some of these aspects in practical life, in our own communication, our own relationships with other people, in the family, in the neighborhood, in the corporate, colleagues, bosses, subordinates, outside stakeholders, your customers, your vendors, your press, those union leaders, whatever it is. We want to make it as practical as possible. We're not going to write an examination, and that is why, at the cost of repeating it so many times, I'm saying words are not important. Even if you forget that word, nothing will happen. But the spirit of what I am trying to say is what is important. You need to grasp that. We are talking about that word alexithymia. It's a small story. We are talking about the story of Gary and Ellen. Gary is a surgeon and Ellen is his fiancée. Gary is a surgeon, obviously from Harvard Medical School, and a highly intellect guy. He passed his surgeonship, one of the toppers, very thoughtful, one of the most successful surgeon. But emotionally, he was a very, very flat guy. Now, Ellen, his fiancée, that pre-more, they go on dates. But Ellen found something surprising in his behavior. Ellen is a very open kind of a girl. She wants to speak to him, but she is not getting the response from Gary over a period of time. She starts feeling, though he is extremely intelligent, highly qualified surgeon, she has her own doubts that if he will be the right guy for marriage. In spite of his success, in spite of his status, she has started feeling like that, and therefore both of them go to a psychiatrist. Now comes a very, very important analysis. It doesn't mean they never feel. These kind of guys, we're talking about that guy, but such people are unable to put their feelings in words, because typically those are the guys who lack self-awareness. Once again, remember that word. We are talking about that word Alexithymia, which is a lack of words on emotions. There is a disconnection between the limbic system and the neocortex. Once again, the words of Kim here, but not to get overwhelmed by these words, but understand what is happening within the brain. We've talked about limbic system. Once again, at the cost of repeating it, limbic does all your life functions, breathing, metabolism, and then the neocortex, which is the thinking brain. Because there is a disconnection between the limbic brain and the neocortex. There is a word that Dr. Peter talks about, somaticizing. He says, mistaking an emotional ache for physical pain. It is actually an emotional pain. But people start getting physical pain, right? This is what it is. Now, another story which I would like to tell you is about a person called as Eliot. Eliot had a tumor in his brain and he was a very successful lawyer. We have talked about it in one of our earlier videos, but of course not in detail. But today I'm coming up with the full story. There was a small orange kind of tumor which need to be removed. But once that happened, he was no longer Eliot, guys. People who are close to him, they said he's undergone a complete personality change intellectually. Intellectually, he was as bright as ever. But when people found a big change in him, he was once again taken to the psychiatrist, certain tests were done. Intellectually, he was as bright as he was before. But from the practical side, he used his time terribly. He lost sense of priority. He couldn't perform his job well, irrespective of his extremely good knowledge, good intellect. He was fired from not one job, from 3-4 different jobs. He was fired. He was reprimanded even before he was fired. But those reprimands did not make any difference. So they took him to the doctor, and that doctor was Antonio Damasio, a very famous Italian doctor. When Eliot was narrating his own story to the doctor, because the psychiatrist asked him a lot of questions, he was talking about his success as a lawyer and what kind of troubles he underwent in life. His wife ran away from him. She didn't live with him. In spite of that, he was putting up very good performance. He was fired from all the jobs. A very sad story. But as he was narrating that story, he was so oblivious to what he was saying. There was no emotions. He doesn't seem upset at all. He was saying everything mechanically without any emotions. In fact, after hearing that story, Damasio was more upset about his life than Eliot himself. And that was when Damasio conducted certain tests. How can this be possible? Such an intelligent guy, very bright guy, one of the most successful lawyers. What happened to him? Then obviously he talks about this operation he had, tumor renewal, etc. And that was when Dr. Antonio Damasio found that along with tumor, certain parts of prefrontal lobes, of course that's not a big one, small parts were removed, as a result of which certain ties with the lower center of the emotional brain were severed, were cut off. Now you can clearly see it's not a mistake of the person, because when certain physical things happen like this within your own brain, you will lose your emotional balance. And this was exactly what happened as far as this tumor removal was concerned. Guys, we're going to talk about a very important things. What does each of these emotional self-awareness, part of that is physiological and large part of that is psychological, because that is the work of the mind. We take too many decisions in life: whom to marry, where to live, which apartment to rent out, etc. etc. Now anyone can understand that such decisions cannot be made through sheer rationality alone. They require gut feel. When we talk about gut feel, we are talking about the wisdom gathered over so many years. They are all intuitive signals. They guide us during crucial moments of decision making, because science cannot help take decisions, because certain decisions are done by your gut, which typically we are talking about intuitive brain, intuition. Now Dr. Damasio calls them as limbic driven surges. They are all somatic markers, call as somatic. Forget about these terminologies, we are not writing a biology, but just understand they are gut feelings. Because when somebody asks you to rationalize that or explain, you will say, you will not be able to explain. Many a times we say, I don't like that guy. But when asked for a reason, we are unable to explain that. But somewhere it gives us a feeling that he is not trustworthy. Where is that coming from? We are typically talking about that. They are all intuitive signals, and these are all limbic driven surges. This is what he calls the wisdom of the unconscious. There are two levels of consciousness. We are talking about the conscious awareness, and the second is unconscious awareness. There are lots and lots of emotions that simmer beneath the threshold of awareness, which you are not aware. Please remember, emotions that simmer beneath the threshold of awareness, and they have an extremely powerful impact on how we perceive things and react. Because your perception, your reaction, they manifest as outward behaviors, right? So this is exactly where self-awareness is important. Awareness of our own moods, thoughts, etc. It is not just anger. We go through lots and lots of such feelings, lots and lots of such emotions throughout the day, different times of the day, with different people on different occasions. So in all these, if we have to regulate our moods, if we have to regulate our behavior, the first most important thing is self-awareness. So as we have said, self-awareness typically starts with the recognition of what we are doing, and the second comes the action. So in each of those seconds, self-awareness becomes extremely important, and many a times when we lose control on our words, our moods, it is always better to give a pause, a 5-second pause or a 10-second pause. Count down. For example, when you are extremely angry with a person and you want to shout, you can shout. Nothing in the world stops you from shouting. But before shouting, count 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Count that. In 10 seconds, you will be able to know what the situation is, what is the issue, and how much you should talk, to what level you should go and talk, what kind of words will be most appropriate for that occasion. So always when you are encountered in such kind of a situation, just give a pause, count down to 10, watch your reactions, watch your words, and that is the first step towards self-awareness. And how can we cultivate? It is not something that we can develop in a day, though it looks so easy. It requires a lot of practice. It requires rigorous practice. And where are you going to practice now? Guys, every day the life throws many situations, right from the morning till the evening. But let us be aware of that. And let us start practicing how to regulate our emotions. And that is the step towards self-awareness. And in the subsequent videos, we will talk about how to manage those emotions, how to motivate ourselves, how to recognize emotions in others, and with the use of all these 4 factors, how we can handle our own relationships better. And that is going to be our next 4 videos on the subject. Okay guys, I hope you all liked this video, and this is Dr. Sadasivam signing off. Till we meet again, bye bye, Jai Hind.